Let's go ahead and get started here. I know we're missing a few. Unfortunately, the few that we're missing are the important ones. All right, nonetheless. So first of all, I guess the elephant in the room is 921. Oliver, do we have any update on where we are with 921?
Not really, no.
We're still waiting on the package from Tomas or somebody.
Yeah,
right?
There was a issue with Jenkins, and I haven't heard back that was resolved yet.
Okay.
And that was yesterday.
Okay. All right. Well, hopefully we can get there. At least, God, I hope we can. So this continued problem with 921, right? We're almost a month after when we should have been out with the release candidate. Just kind of showcases a little bit of why we need to make sure that for 922 we have a solid release process in terms of being able to generate the packages and generate updates based on everything that's been submitted into the community, and right now we're severely lacking in that regard. So Oliver, we were talking about this a little bit the other day, but I guess can we get a little bit of a update from you in terms of how far along we are with the new continuous integration and packaging type of changes that you guys have been working on?
Let's see. So in the last week, I added a couple PowerShell scripts that will set all the appropriate version numbers for all the sub extensions to the current build number. That's configurable in VSTS with variables. So when we're queuing a build, we can set what version number it will be. There's also an option I haven't set it up as a variable yet, but I have the script in there that will set if it's a alpha, beta, or a stable build. There's a SQL script that looks like it was added into DNN somewhere like mid-8 cycle that updates a lot of versions of like skin objects and stuff through a SQL script. And it's something I don't think that we need to continually update all of those skin objects. But if it is something that we decide that we do need, we'll have to script that to generate or copy that SQL script and rename it.
As far as I know, they simply update the version, put the update script in every DNN version, and just list the number of extensions which get a new version number, and then update it manually. And I saw, I think from Tomas as an item where he said this should be automated, or better, this should be just upgraded, and any version number should only be upgraded if the version has a change. So we can see, for example, the HMN module has modified since last version, instead of using the same DNN version for everything.
Right, exactly. I mean, I think from my perspective, I like to at least research what we need to do to not do that anymore, because basically we have a module install package that may say version X, but then we update the database to be an entirely different version. It doesn't make a lot of sense that we're doing it that way, but I don't know exactly.
I mean, it's all the same version number, but it's just two different ways. There's a lot of like manifest files that get updated. I think there's like 20 different manifests that get updated for like the HTML module, all the various providers. But then there's the SQL script that I'm just trying to pull it up right now. That
The SQL script updates the registration in the packages table, I think, right?
Yep.
And the question is whether it makes sense to have everything labeled the same version, or whether we should start with DNN10. I wouldn't start in the middle of a version, but maybe we should then just say, okay, this is a 10.0, and only if a component has been updated, we say, okay, this is HTML module 10.0. One or something like this. I think it would make it much easier for us to identify where changes are, and it would be much easier to handle the version upgrades.
Okay.
So yeah, if we want to keep it going, then it'll just have to be a manual file that gets checked into the release branch. I don't think there's any reason to script generating it.
Right.
Yeah.
Just a pull request that we have as part of each of the
releases. Yep, exactly. And then like the final thing that we still need to do is set up an account with write access to GitHub that VSTS can use. So we can set up the continuous integration so it's running on every pull request and generating those builds.
Okay. All right, and I think we can take care of that. That actually, Oliver, let's circle back with Ash on that. I want to make sure we just get the right, I think we just need to be, make sure that we get the proper permissions set, and I'm not sure if I can do that or if we need somebody else to do it, because I think you have to see the whole organization, and we can't see the whole organization in there. So
okay,
we'll have to see. So I mean, with that, so Oliver, from there, in terms of a source package creation and a deploy package creation,
I mean, that's I'm commenting out 2 lines to build those packages.
Okay.
And it's using the same MS build script that we've been using for ages, so it should just work and generate the package.
Okay, so then in that case, we should be set. Once those couple of little things we're just talking about get taken care of, then we should have full automation on our side where we can continue using those packages now going forward without any problem, correct?
Yeah, there'll be some minor things that we'll have to do, like update the nightly builds to, we'll probably have to publish the artifact to a different location so the nightly build link can get to it. But all that stuff's minor after we, I guess, flip the switch or whatever.
So Clint, one thing I guess I'd like to take as a to do here, I want to make sure, since the 2 people that are necessary for that, I would like to get ESW's internal process switched over to consuming these newly generated builds the second that we get that automated build agent out there. Because that's what caused all of the confusion and problem that was the 9.2.1 release. So I just want to make sure that we track that we need to get that commitment from ESW that as soon as we get that squared away, which we need their assistance on the permissions, that as soon as that's done, that they're going to switch to using those packages.
Yep, I mean, I can help facilitate the combos. I mean, that's ultimately, Ash thing.
Right, yeah. All right. So let's see. So with that, one other thing that came up in this past week is the managing of version numbers of dependent or included JavaScript libraries or other things. So jQuery, UI, React, Require.js, those types of things. we've worked towards the semantic versioning concept in our case, right? Of we're trying to be more true to the major minor revision release numbering scheme. But we also still have a large number of client-side libraries that are very old. For example, right now, Require.js, we are including version 2.1.1. The current version is 2.5 or 2.3.5. So a fair ways out, a couple minor revisions going on, one potential breaking change, but it appears to be a pretty small one. But it warrants a discussion of what should our plan be for upgrading these libraries. Is it acceptable to upgrade as a revision release to a new version of a library? Or is it more appropriate that if the library made a minor version update, we would include it in our next minor version update?
I vote just 9.3. So in other words, no dependency switching, but for minor upgrades, for a revision upgrade, sorry. Mm-hmm. Just period. Like it should be to all developers, a huge banner going out. We will not touch any dependencies while we're on a revision release.
I agree.
Now, question to that stance. If a dependent library, let's just say, for example, jQuery goes from version 3 to version 30 because they're weird like that. Yeah. Would that be an acceptable with breaking changes on a dependent library as a 9.3, or would you hold that until
10? If it affects module or any third-party developers, and they need to retest the extensions, and they might even need to create different versions for the old previous major version and the new one, I would wait for the next major version. Otherwise, it doesn't make sense. If you have two versions of their module like DMX 9.4 and DMX 10, and they need just to have a new version to fulfill DNN 9.3. No one would understand why he needs to have this one instead of that one, and it would make it much more difficult for the extension developers, in my opinion.
Yeah, a different take on this would be like anything high risk is major release.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's certainly some low risk major releases in the JavaScript community. I mean, especially some may bump because of dropping a Node.js version, but it doesn't really affect the client side of the library.
Right.
But also with JavaScript libraries, you can have multiple versions installed. So if we are using jQuery 3 and then we also install jQuery 30, that may or may not affect other extensions because they should still be able to request version 3. Now, with jQuery, it's generally on every page, so you don't really have that freedom, but for most others, you do.
Right. There's another aspect to this, which is that now with the current development practices in JavaScript, it's more common to roll in any dependencies into your bundle, right? And I think there's also a task for us to kind of communicate to our audience, like what do you think we should be doing as module developers? Should we rely on the framework to supply, let's say, Require.js, or should Require.js just be bundled into whatever we're pumping over the wire so that we absolutely know what dependency we're taking?
Okay.
I mean, to elaborate or to answer that question, I mean, more and more, I'm bundling stuff, basically.
Yes, at Cantaris, we're also bundling everything whenever we make any particular extension.
Right.
We have looked at moving towards using the Angular library, the JavaScript library component in DNN as a way to effectively reduce the number of dependencies. So that as a mechanism might be something worth considering using.
Yeah, and there's for instance, jQuery is kind of the odd one out because it does get loaded even for like basically trivial stuff. It's almost, I think it's compulsory, right? It absolutely goes out on every page request. But if you talk about React, for instance, I've recently switched to just bundling it up because I don't think it's going to be practical with the speed that that these libraries move to wait on DNN, or even for myself between modules, for instance, to share stuff. I think it's pointless.
And I will say, at least on the part of CDF in DNN, there are features in there to support like creating bundle groups, and that's something I've wanted to look at for a while to see if there's any way that we can, instead of bundling all the components into like just one massive file per page, to bundle up like jQuery and all the plugins into one bundle that would be reused on all the pages.
That's nice.
Because I guess the one problem I see is if every module developer starts bundling everything, it creates a lot of extra overhead. And right now, everything that Google's looking at is how many bytes you're transferring, and
right. I'll put it this way, to elaborate on the React.js thing. It moves very quickly, and unfortunately, they break stuff, right? Yep. So going from version 0.15 to 0.16, all of a sudden, stuff needed to change. And I was so fed up with seeing the speed with which this all changed, and having modules, some modules on a 0.14 and others on a 0.15 and others on 0.16 release. And I was like, why am I even bothering trying to cut out the, 50K or something that this library actually adds on? That was it's a complex territory, and there's a lot of pros and cons there, put it that way. But I do think with our semantic versioning, we should be treating JavaScript libraries in the framework in the same way as we do DLLs that come from like Newtonsoft or whatever. In other words, high risk, major version, and we don't touch them for revisions.
Okay. And that is the general consensus from those involved. We were getting some pushback from a couple that were really wanting, us to force in a version change to something early. And I don't think I don't think it makes sense. So I just wanted to be sure, again, that we are looking at this from from a group perspective to make sure that we're correct.
So, yeah, absolutely.
All right. Let's see here. All right. So is there anything that anybody else here wants or needs to discuss before I guess, change the direction a little bit to chat about a couple of the other things? Is there anything else top of mind that is just biting at you that we need to get addressed? Okay. I want everybody to talk all at once.
I need a new plane.
Oh, well, we all need that. At least some of us do. All right. So last week we started the concept of basically putting together a bit of a roadmap, if you will. And one of the things with that document is we have a lot of people that have gone out and added some things to that list. And let me share that screen here. So this list, the purpose with this list was to really try to document, what do we see from a community perspective of items that need to get addressed, and things that are of an importance to the community. So right now, in terms of things that we have planned, we've talked about the automated build support stuff, which is what Oliver's working on right now. I think we're getting closer and closer to being ready with that. The other goals for 922, at least as I see it right now, is really any bug fixes that we can get in. I want to get a 922 release out fairly soon, but I don't want it to be too soon with it, right? We were originally talking about an end of August date. I think an end of August date is almost too soon for us to plan with a 922 release, considering that we've not posted the release candidate for 921. So with that, is there anything from the list of items needing investigation that we have down here? Is there anything else that we really need to make sure gets included as part of a 922 release? And do we have any thoughts from, as a community, putting a stake in the road, where and when we think that release should happen?
I would like to add this improved SQL script management we talked about in Ireland, Mitch and Peter, as a beta in 922, so people can try it, can give feedback, and we can officially include it in 9.3. You remember I already presented it.
And what you're talking about there is the optional ability. So we would allow it as, it would be a new feature, but we wouldn't
break anything. But with 922 being testing it, in 9.3 I could try to put in, or I could start, or at least at 10 I could start to move over the existing scripts, because the existing script for the platform, it would make sense before we start to aggregating the scripts that we put it into, that we restructure the existing scripts for DNN platform that at that time as well.
Okay.
It's just a restructuring of what's there. It's not in that second stage, but the first, of course, is we need to have the platform support for it.
Right. Yep. You're talking about just the platform support for it, which part of me still says that's a minor feature. It should be a 9.3 item rather than a 9.2.2 item.
That's why I say in 9.2.2 I just would add it as a beta feature. It wouldn't hurt anything. We wouldn't restructure any of the existing files, but module developers could have a look at it, could get familiar. We can blog about it. People can give a feedback, and then we have enough preparation to do maybe some changes, or and before we really include it in 9.3.
But the normal procedure is to build it in 9.3 and stabilize in 9.3.1, 9.3.2, etc. right? So that would be the normal action that we would do. So the new feature comes in 9.3.0. No one's going to use it yet because it's new, right? No commercial modules out there on the store use it yet. However, that's when we start to build up some practice with it, and then in 9.3.1, if there are any issues, they get repaired. I don't think there's any big benefit in rolling it out in beta in 9.2.2, especially since for commercial modules, it takes years anyway to move dependencies, right? So it's done only usually for core modules or something like that kind of tend to stay with the framework a bit closer.
And Sebastian, I guess the question for you is, how soon would you be able to have the issue and pull request for that feature submitted?
If you want it for 9.2, I will do my best to get it done. I don't think it's too big, but I haven't had a look into the necessary changes yet.
So here's one of the things that I'm looking at right now from a schedule perspective. We already have a couple things for 9.3. We don't have a lot for 9.2.2 aside from a couple bug fixes. Does it make sense for us to get a 9.2.1 out that's most likely going to be out August 1, and then do a 9.2.2, in September and a 9.3 in October? Or does it make more sense for us to retarget a little bit, get 9.2.1 out as soon as we can, and go straight to 9.3 and do that in code freeze end of September, release the first week of October?
I vote for the former for the following reason. I think people underestimate the amount of work it has taken a number of us here to move the automated build process. In other words, it may all seem trivial in terms of bug fixes or changes for 9.2.2, but it is crucial that we get experience and we get speed in building and rolling out the platform. Mm-hmm. So 9.2.2 would be a great exercise in, can we actually release the platform? What is going to be the process? Push the button, etc. Rather than lump that all in with 9.3. where we want to make sure we do it right because there's going to be new features.
And just understand the fact that the community may not even adopt this release, but basically treat it
I think they do because I think adoption actually goes up when the risk is lower. So, if there's only 5 or 10 bug fixes in there, for people, it becomes a lot more attractive to actually install that over a 9.2.1 than if you've got a whole list and potential, new features and potential breakage, right? That people have to go through and sift through, okay, is this going to, be something or not, etc. So I would argue there's a flip side to that, which might actually work in the same direction.
Okay. So what? Would timeline wise, do we still want to target the end of August for 9.2.2 and just keep it tight, knowing that there may not be a lot of bug fixes and it may be a situation where August 1 we release, a full version of 9.2.2 or 9.2.1, and then, 14 days later or 30 days later, we release the RC for 9.2.2.
Yeah. Another option I was thinking about is what was if 9.2.1 never really got out of RC? If we 9.2.1 RC and then followed it up with a 9.2.2 RC and released that end of August.
I think we did that in the past for some releases.
I don't think so.
I've never been a big fan of it. No, but I'm talking really early days, like in the 1 point or 2 point something.
I think that there's some community push for this 9.2.1 release to get out the door because there are some fairly big fixes in 9.2.1. I think we'd be probably fighting an uphill battle with a lot of people if we
Yep. Yeah, no, I'm
9.2.1. I was thinking the same thing. My biggest thing is that I know that if we do a bunch of releases early on, you know, it just may be the case that we do it, right? And the marketing, and if this is the case that we do them tight together, I want to purposely keep 9.2.2 small.
yeah, no, I've got no problem with doing it.
Bug fixes, automation, and ESW is consuming this build for the internal review. Like that's it. Like I actually wouldn't be opposed to saying that we are going to roll a 9.2.2 release code freeze on August 1st and just getting it going to focus as much as we can on the build process. Right? I think it gets dictated by the build process of when the build process is stable. That's when we release 9.2.2.
Exactly. I think that should be your priority.
Yeah, we haven't communicated anything where we're like, oh, we're definitely going to release everything like every quarter or every month. Or we haven't done any of that, right?
There's been nothing, and I don't want to commit to anything yet.
Right.
I'm still reluctant because there's a couple of people that, you know, watched one of the recordings and they're like, well, you said, you know, from the recording in the talks in the technology group, there's going to be a release coming. Where's that release? So I've already been dealing with that a little bit, and I want to avoid it. But I think what would be nice is if we could target a code freeze for a 9.2.2, I'm really thinking that it would be nice to be able to do a code freeze on 8.17. Which would then put us to doing an RC on 8.19 and a release on, crap, that won't work. Actually, no, we could make that work. And then we could target a release on Tuesday, the 2nd of September, because that would still give us a full week after the US holiday on Monday. Something like that, I think, would be a great target for this, and really, though, focus on ESW.
It'd be nice to get a couple performance improvements in there if we can as well.
Right. So I think if we can do something like that, I have some other little stuff that needs to be done. So one of the things that we determined, the licensing notes that are included with the release are, how shall we say it, a smidge old and a smidge outdated by like 5 years, maybe more. So I'm going to go through all of those and make sure that the license notes and things that are there that we are obligated to distribute are actually current and correct. Like the license notes basically say that we're distributing jQuery 1. We're not. So there's stuff there that we need to get corrected, which I think is something that, you know, that's just documentation.
Right. But I think as you can see, the list quickly grows. I mean, even and ESW has an ambition level to release quite often. Yes. Now, I'm not saying that, you know, we should necessarily be forced down that road. However, I think for revision releases, it's actually quite healthy to roll in just a few bug fixes and re-release, rather than hold off on big releases. So,
well, I think it'll also fix the, do we issue a hot fix? If we can do a revision release with lower number of fixes and get it done
Exactly.
on a more regular basis, we can get around this hot fix conversation.
Exactly. And it helps also us mesh well with ESW, I think, because they are involved in the release process because of QA and everything.
Right.
So, yeah.
So
I'm sure 922 probably won't be fully automated with VSTS, but I'm hoping to get pretty close.
Right. I mean, I think, and Oliver, just to make sure that we're sure here, what you're thinking it might not be automated is a VSTS task where you click and then magic happens and GitHub is updated, right?
Right.
That's the last piece you're talking about.
Pretty much, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's acceptable. I mean, I think if we have to do some manual deployment to drop things to GitHub or that kind of thing, I think it would be, I think that would, I don't think there's anything wrong with trying to do that. So then that brings me to the 9.3. So 9.3, we've already talked about, async and deferred for JavaScript. Sebastian, the new scripting pattern, we can continue to discuss this a little bit, but I think that getting it for 9.3 gives you a little bit more lead time to be able to get something out there. Are there any? So it looks like some of these other things that we're looking.
I have one update on the first item that's there that's mentioned that doesn't have a place yet. I spoke to Timo recently, and he was actually interested. But the thing is, it's vacation time here, so it's difficult to get a hold of people. But I was chatting with Timo, and apparently he's preparing a document to kind of try to list everything that's missing from the persona bar experience, and trying to set a kind of a work list for that. And he's not afraid to get his hands dirty to do some of this stuff. And I think it's good to get this to get that ball rolling with a dedicated small team of people who are willing to. And I think that would fit quite well with 9.3 in my experience. If they can already make the first editions, and
I think anything would be anything that can be done there would be fantastic. And I think in chat there's something we need to make sure that Timo gets it. That looks like I think Ederson did have something that caught a good portion of it. So I would like to see. Also, from my perspective, I'd like to get some of the string stuff performance-wise taken care of for a 9.3 release. I think it would be pretty easy to do. The changes aren't going to be like massive changes for the lower volume sites, but the high volume sites, it'll make a pretty big change from what I've been able to tell so far. And Daniel, I think, who here has the most experience working with persona bar changes, I guess is a better question. Do we have anyone?
Ash, I guess.
I mean, I've gotten it to compile, but I haven't tried any changes yet.
I've done extensions.
Okay.
Yeah, me too.
Persona bar extensions, right?
Yeah.
Or are you saying persona bar itself, like the core of the persona bar, or
no, the chain tweaking the React? I guess that's the right. Is that what you're after, Mitch?
Yeah, Daniel, I guess what are you looking for help with in terms of being able to compile out a change and validate?
Well, everything that relates to the persona bar, either the library or the React components, or making a change or adding a persona bar module, there isn't a lot of documentation on how to make the change, test it, and build it, and submit a clean pull request. If someone can help me do that, I have time to invest in reintegrating the things that are missing, but I have a hard time getting there.
I'd be happy to work with you to make sure you can do that. It's something I'm in the middle of figuring out with the VSTS integration packages.
Okay, and that's something we could document because I think it would help a lot of people.
Any input from Ash as well on, how, because I know nothing about React.
There is a little bit of trick there, just a bit of trick to how to load up in a debugging environment. So I can certainly, maybe I can do a video for you guys to get started and to see, how it is, and then you can go from there. So I can do a video, like a 5-minute, 10-minute video as to how I would debug.
That would be great. If anything we can get to get a little bit of a head start into working with it, because I know that for me, I'm in the same boat. I've not had enough time to dedicate to figuring out how in the world it all works in grave detail.
Could you do something simple, like just add a text box to like site settings and just save a generic like hello world portal setting or something?
Yeah, that would be great. I think we need it for the GDPR stuff as well.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that'd be pretty simple. And that way, just like setting up the project and add a simple UI element and save it.
And GDPR, will that provoke a minor release or not?
I think it should be in 9.3 as well. I still need to gather the groups together and that we get a starting point, and then we'll see whether we can meet the 9.3 release or whether we will need a little bit longer and maybe put it into 9.4.
Yeah.
Well, one thing we could use as an example is there's no way to change someone who has upgraded. There's no way to change the host email when you set up the SMTP server. The email address used for the test, if you upgraded, it tries to send to that email, and there's no place except in the database to go change it. That could be a very short example we could use for that.
Yeah.
And that should be surfaced as well, because that's the email address. If a new portal gets created, it's the sender for the admin. Hey, you got your new site set up, and those are the data. Those are the details.
Well, and it's also used in a token replace on the terms of use and privacy policy as well.
So there's
those are admin. Those are portal specific, so they need to be admins.
Nope. There's one place in there that is site specific. I've done it on a multi-portal install. So there's a site contact, and then in the verbiage, there's also a overall. We just ran into this with somebody that we had to go change it in the database because there's 2 tokens. It's only one of the documents that uses both of the tokens. I can't remember which one it is.
I think that needs to be fixed, because the host is not related to any GDPR stuff, neither to terms of use nor to privacy statement.
Yep, exactly. So I think that GDPR stuff, it would be great if we can get some mobilization of the community for 9.3. I think we need to start looking at, if we can't get a bunch of individuals that can actually spend the time to truly do it, it may make more sense to get some community contributions to create the tasks of, like, this is what we need to do, and this is how we need to do it, to be able to do, to be able to find some other people, whether it's somebody in this group or somebody else, to give them kind of a, hey, this is the feature we're looking for. This is what we need it to do. To put that spec out there as we see it. So from a 9.3 release perspective, do we want to try to tentatively target that in, the end of September? Do we want to push to October to give ourselves a little bit more time? what do we at least have at a high level thought right now of where we want to set the goalpost for a 9.3 release?
In my own experiences with the flow of the year, I mean, definitely in Europe, August kind of comes and goes like that because a lot of people are away. So you get, for instance, these meetings, there's only half the people there, right? Mm-hmm. Any other kind of decisions you want, it's hard to get them because people are away. So I would definitely not publicly make this too ambitious in terms of timeline.
Yeah, and right now I don't want to share a public timeline of anything other than I think 9.2.2. We're getting close enough where we're going to want, once we release 9.2.1, I think we need to put out a code freeze date and let people know, okay, this is what the next cycle is going to be, because that'll entice people to go out and play with 9.2.1 to be able to realize, hey, this is what we need to do. But I'm more of a, right, what we're trying to do is we're trying to get community contribution support, right? So we want Oliver, for example, to contribute the async deferred JS stuff. We need to make sure, okay, so we're targeting, the first week of October for code freeze. Right. That way we can work backwards and make sure we get the commitments from those that are contributing to make sure that we make it to that release. Sure. Is all I'm looking to do right now from a dates perspective. I'm not looking to share it publicly, but I'm looking to be able to kind of set the expectation. As Sebastian's working to mobilize folks with GDPR, if we can start talking about, hey, what can we accomplish in the next 6 weeks? That's better than, hey, what can we accomplish in the next 6 months? Is all I'm trying to do right now.
All right, fair enough. Then yeah, don't, by all means set a date for that, like a code freeze on the 1st of October, and work back on that.
And I think we can, and if we decide that we don't have the community contributions, I think Will mentioned it in a couple meetings ago, right? We are volunteer at this point. We may have to extend a release out. It is something that either we may have to extend a release out, or we may have to still do the release, but it's not going to have all of the features in it that we want. So we do need to be careful what we commit.
Yeah.
So, I think if we looked at potentially right now, maybe a targeted code freeze around 10.5, RC on 10.8, and then a release on 10.22. That might be something good to help us start working towards in terms of getting committal. And then from there, I think we can start to look at, okay, what does a 9.3.1 release look like? And the goal, right, would be that we can start to do those maintenance releases in a shorter time frame. Because ideally, the 9.3 release should take minimal effort for us to actually release as a community. And it should be as simple as clicking a couple of buttons and making things work that way. At least that would be the goal.
And do a little bit of testing.
Exactly.
I would like to, at some point, doesn't have to be today, but make public on GitHub in the milestones for 9.3, 9.2.2, and for 10.0, the code freeze date. That way, if anybody else has a feature that they're passionate about, they'll know well in advance the dates that they can aim for to get it into an upcoming release.
Yeah. I mean, I think that the 9.2.2 code freeze date, from my opinion, if we're going to do a 9.2.2 release, I think that 8/17 date, it's a month from today, I think is a good date. We need to get 9.2.1 RC out. Like that needs to happen. But I think that we're at a point where I wouldn't want to let a 922 release slip. And if that means that we end up having, a 921 release and a 922 RC really close together, I think that's what ends up happening as part of the transition. The 9.3 release date, I guess I'm a little less confident on sharing that quite yet until we see a little bit of how 922 goes and how quickly things come in. But I welcome opinions. But I do think that, the milestones on GitHub, we do need to share those as much as we can and as early as we can.
Do we have a page where milestones are currently described?
Yeah, under the GitHub issues, if you switch over to milestones, there's nothing really in them at the moment because we don't have the issues created, but we need to go through and create the issues and add them.
Yeah, and actually, one thing that I think would be nice, Oliver, if we can, is get the one for 10.0 created.
And then, right there, milestones.
Because the nice thing, at least with this, is we can associate a milestone with it as well. So, for example, where is Joe's? So, like, this pull request from Joe.
Yep.
This is one that really should be assigned a milestone of 10, because that's where we've decided that we want to allow this to happen, is on 10. And that would help basically drill in and feed a milestone view so that people could actually see what open pull requests do we have on a particular milestone. How many do we actually have for a particular milestone? And we'll let people see things a little bit more. So then
maybe we should add a placeholder if it's possible to say, okay, there will be more to come, because it doesn't make sense, for example, in this past view that it looks like 922 is already completed just because the items are missing.
Yeah, no, that's why we need to start getting ahead of like our roadmap and create the issues first.
I don't think we can do, so we can drop a description out here. So
the date I kind of wanted to use for the code freeze date, and then describe that in the description.
Right. I mean, so basically, if we do something like that, I'm going to go back and clear this in, but we can basically flag 10.0.0 as a future release. So we can edit a description out here, and I think that will help to alleviate some of those any confusion that might happen. And then they can look at historical ones under closed milestones.
Maybe we should include a new 931 milestone as well at the moment, because then people see, okay, after 9.3 there will be another stabilization, as we currently have only very few items listed here. At least as soon as we start working with
all the milestones in advance, but what we really need is the issues to start putting in them.
Yeah, sure, but at least to give some idea, because currently there's only the release schedule page on DNN software, which is fairly outdated. And maybe we should ask the team, what is marketing team, to point that page just to this view, to our milestone.
Yeah, no, it's a work in progress to get that updated. But we need the issues to be able to organize and put into issues before we can really generate a roadmap. Just pointing people to a page with no issues and nothing planned is
exactly. Also, there's something else. Like there's a certain logic in the way it's done now with the milestones, which is you go from fine to larger, right? So you go from, you just have the immediate revision releases in front of you, the next minor release, and the next major release, so that you can order your issues into those. I don't think it makes much sense. You won't have 931 there until 930 is released and you start identifying revision stuff.
So typically what happens
Or you postpone stuff from 930.
Is 931, and we could relabel this as 930. But one of the things that would happen, I think, is that we would, as 9.3 goes into the testing cycle or the RC cycle.
Yeah, the code freeze.
That, as soon as the code freeze hits, that's when the next milestone for that revision would happen.
Exactly. Then they become relevant.
Because at that point in time, somebody could report a bug. We could determine that it's not a big enough bug to stop the 9.30 release from going out, but it's something that needs immediately addressed in 9.3.1. So we'd have the milestone there to be able to assign that item to it. And that's...
Or in case we say, okay, this doesn't fit into 9.3.0 for some reason, for capacity or whatever, and then we say, okay, we postpone it to 9.3.1 because we don't got the time to fix this issue, or which has been originally addressed for 9.3.0, or we didn't get it completed for 9.3.0.
Right.
And that would be before in advance of that.
But that happens at code freeze normally.
Yeah, about code freeze, a little bit before.
Yeah, and the key being that we just want to be able to be as open and communicative as we can for where we think something's going to fall. Because people that, especially with the way that things work with GitHub, if you watch an issue and we move that issue from one milestone to another, that generates notifications to the individuals that are watching that particular issue. So somebody can then see that we did end up, moving it to a different milestone or something like that. And I think that's where, getting a good plan in place here is really one of the biggest things. So I'll work on continuing to clean up the document here. Anybody that has stuff that they're working on, would be great. Next week, I want to try to dive into this a little bit more in terms of, are there tasks that we can assign? If there's stuff that you can commit to, let's get the issues created so that we know what the items are, so that, as Oliver mentioned, we can get them associated, to the particular milestone, because it is nice to be able to, go out and look at the 9.2.2, the 9.2.2 release and see, this is, the things that are included.
I created an issue, not a milestone at first, so.
Oh, yeah. So.
I don't know why it ended up there. It's kind of weird.
Yeah, we can just.
Can we delete it?
I can't delete it.
I don't think you can delete. You can only close.
Yeah, I think you can only close.
But you can unassign the milestone. I'll do that right now. I don't even know how that got in there.
Yeah, but basically, that way we can start to, and this will start to create that public view. This will start to create that public exposure into, here's what we're doing, and the primary goal being, we have the tools available to us to make it here. The only part that's complicated is we do have multiple repositories, right? So the Persona Bar stuff is in another repository, so it's going to have its own milestones and it's going to have its own details for that release. That's just an unfortunate.
So kind of related to that, I've started a module. It's still a little ways out that will hopefully consolidate all of the issues and roadmaps into a single dashboard that we can put on DNN software. Because right now trying to manage 5 different issue repositories and roadmaps and milestones.
I totally agree. We should try to get this together, although there will be, of course, additional ones for components we bundle, but as long as those are parts of the core, it should be one big repository, in my opinion.
Yep. All right. I unfortunately, I have to go for now. I appreciate everybody's input. I think we're moving towards the right direction here. It's just a matter of continue to get there. Biggest thing is getting 9.2.1 and 9.2.2 out there. Anything, little fixes, improvements, that kind of thing, so we can have some good merit with the community would be great.
Mitchell, do you want to ask Ash the question you were asking me about earlier about consuming the build?
Oh, yes. So Ash, the one thing we want to just really make sure of is we're really close to having the automated builds on our side. Actually, I think we have the install build or the install package and upgrade packages being built now in VSTS.
It's super close. There's like one more issue that needs to be solved, and then we should do it.
What do we need to do to make sure that we get the commitment that ESW can switch over to utilizing those builds as soon as possible?
Yeah, so as soon as we have 921 out, so we've not even given you the final builds, right, Oliver? Have you got them?
No, I haven't. There was an issue with Jenkins. And
yeah, so I think he's fighting that. It's not picking the latest commits for whatever reason. So as soon as we have that, and then I don't know if we need to wait for the release or not, but we have to get past this problem and make sure that the release candidate is out. Don't want to create any confusion right now. Maybe in the worst case, we may have to wait for the release to go out, because I get a little bit concerned about mixing things up before the release, because who knows what it might pick up.
Yep.
Last thing we need is we have to do a last build, and then it is all, from all over the place, right? So I want to make sure that this release is out of the door, and then that will be the first thing to tackle, to pick up the packages from the VSTS.
Okay.
And I guess as one follow-up question, we need some permissions adjusted so we can set up a continuous integration. Are you available after this meeting? Can I ping you?
Yeah, you can ping me on Skype.
Perfect.
Okay, and then Ash, one question in chat. The Persona Bar video you were talking about of the quick overview, how soon might you be able to get to that?
Give me a day or two.
Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. I have to run. If you guys need to continue on, that's fine. Sorry, but I got a hard stop for another meeting. We'll chat next week, and if anybody needs anything specific from me, just let me know.
Thanks a lot, man. Bye-bye. Thanks, everyone.